You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K23. BJ Armstrong and Mo Moosey alongside. Here to break down everything from the world of the NBA. If you missed yesterday's show, you should go and check that out. We spoke about some of the trades that people think are very likely to happen before the NBA's trade deadline in just under a month from today. BJ, towards the end of the show yesterday, you actually said something that was very interesting, and I think a lot of people don't take account for, speaking for the fans and the media, and that's the human side of getting traded. Now, you yourself have been on every angle possible of a trade. You've been a player who's been traded. You've been an executive who's made trades, and now you're an agent who, has players that get traded. So I would love today if you could share with our listeners here each three of those steps, as a player, as an executive, and as an agent, what the trade process is like. So starting off as a player, do you know that you're likely to be traded? Did you pay a lot of attention to the kind of rumors that go on and your name in the newspaper and the headline saying he's in trade talks, and sources say, I don't know if that was the thing in the 90s. Do players have much inkling of whether or not they're going to be traded before they get the call saying that it's happened?
Well, I think the first time you hear your name, or at least for me, I'll just give my experience. The first time I heard my name in trade rumors, I didn't know what to think, right? That was the first time, a trade rumor, when you hear your name for the first time, it felt like to me, rejection. It was the first time, like, what do you mean? Like, no one wants me to be here. Like, you play at high school, for the most part, people want you on the team, right? The coach, the players, you're one of the better players. You go to college.
Yeah, you're the best player around.
Yeah, you go to the NBA, people draft you, telling you what you're going to do, what you're going to add to the team. And then all of a sudden, sources said, he's going to get traded. So it felt like total rejection. And I didn't know exactly how to deal with it. And when I first heard about it, because it was like you don't go into the locker room and be like, hey guys, did you read back then you used to read the newspaper. Did you see that I was in the trade rumor today, trade section of the paper? Or, now you hear Woj, and you hear things now on Twitter and so forth and so on. So it was a very brand new experience to me. And I remember when it first happened, I had like a couple games where I just wasn't myself. I just, it wasn't like, the GM said he wanted to trade me or the coach. It was a source.
Rumors.
And rumors in the rumor section. And I remember I had a vet say, hey, B, they call me Kid, right? Say, hey, Kid, let's go grab lunch. So, all right, whatever. I could use a friend right now to get my mind off things. I remember we were on the road, and I never forget. He said this to me, and it just made all the sense in the world. He was like, "Hey, I know it's hard for you right now, with the trade rumors." And I was just shocked that the vets, I wanted to be, a guy who didn't let things bother me on the outside because, I felt a responsibility. I was trying to learn how to be a pro. And he said, listen, I know that's always hard for you. He goes, I remember when it first happened to me. He said, but I'm going to tell you the secret to this business. And I remember he said it, and the word business, just like, he didn't say, I'm going to tell you the secret to the NBA. He said, I'll tell you about this business. Mm-hmm. He said, the moment you stop hearing your name in trade rumors, that means you're probably out of the league.
Mm-hmm.
He says, so embrace every trade rumor that you have, because that means you're a part of the business. But in order for you to maximize this business, you better perform every time you step onto the court. It doesn't matter where you get paid, but what it does matter is that you get paid. And he said it just like that. Mm-hmm. He didn't make it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't an emotional. It just made sense to me. And it still makes sense now that when you don't hear your names in the trade rumor mode, that means nobody wants you. That means you're probably on your way out of this league. Okay? And from that moment on, Mo, I wanted to make sure that my name was in every trade rumor. That meant that I had a chance to be a part of this business because I dreamed of playing in the NBA. And from that moment on, Mo, I never looked at another trade rumor, or it never affected me in the way that it did when I first saw my name. So I think it's great for everyone to be in the trade rumor. You know why? It's because that means as long as you have a chance, Mo, to make that shot, and then if you're open in the corner, Mo, if you get the ball, you shoot it, you got a chance to make it. When they stop passing you the ball, Mo, that means it's over. So it never concerned me. It doesn't concern me now. When I hear my guys and they're like, how come you don't, I don't care. It's not that I don't care. It's like, it's great. Because as long as someone wants you in this league, you're living out your dream. You have a chance to have a career in this league as long as there's one person out there who wants you. And I never forgot that as a young player. That happened my rookie year, right around the trade deadline. And it was just comforting to know that as long as I can perform up here, I will have some say in my destiny. Did I always know where I was going to get traded? I didn't. Did I know when? I didn't. But as long as I went out and played and performed, though, Mo, I knew there was always going to be a landing space for me. And that I was on my way to becoming a professional. And that, to me, just allowed me to just only be concerned about the things I knew I could control. And I could control how I played when I went out there on the court, or at least give my best effort.
So when you do get traded and you get the call saying that move has been made, there's been reports where some players have been traded during a game and they're sat there on the bench. There's some players who have said that they got traded whilst getting onto the team plane to go to a road game. There's some players who find out from the media that they've been traded. How much typically for a run-of-the-mill kind of trade notice does a player get? And when you get that call, what's the process? Straight away you get the call, all right, cool, going to go pack my bags, pack up my apartment, and leave town. What's the process like of the actual being traded?
Yeah, it's not that simple. Well, what ends up happening is, trades normally happen probably over the summer, in my opinion. So you'll say, Mo will say, okay, I'll let Mo go. I go, Mo, who's available on your team? And you'll be like, oh, okay. Everyone's available except X, Y, and Z. Oh, okay, great. Great to know. Let's just keep talking. Okay. Now, everyone has what's called the setup call. Okay. That's how the setup calls always happen. Who's in play?
Mm-hmm. This is from an executive perspective. Then.
It's from an executive, right? You may have a fill-out call. You may have, such and such. Mo is working for whatever, another organization, and I'm working for another organization. And they'll be like, Mo, call your guy BJ, see what's up, who they like on their team. Those are always, what do you think? Well, not what do you think? That's why you have Las Vegas Summer League. Everyone's figuring out Summer League isn't to develop players. Summer League is to figure out who on your team you can trade. Because if you determine that this guy who you just drafted can fill in for this guy who is on the last year of his contract, or maybe you're trying to get that contract off your books, you're going to trade the guy. That's what Summer League is really all about. You're trying to determine the value of everyone on your team as quickly as possible. So trades are being set up right there in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So then once you go to training camp, you get a chance to evaluate your team again. Sometime you'll be like, I need to see my team play. I'm going to give them the first 20. That's where I got the 25 game mark. I don't think we're going to make any moves early. We're going to go to training camp with this team and let's see what they do. After 25 games, that setup call, now you're going to be like, we're 12-12. I thought we were going to be better. Mm-hmm. We got to make a trade. So now the setup call goes to, Hey Mo, how things going? We're 12 and 12. How you guys doing? Well, we're 13 and 4. We're let's say, we're 20 and we're 20 and 4, right? We're things are going well. It's such and such. I know we talked over the summer, how anybody available. Now the guy that suddenly wasn't available on your 12 and 12 team, now he's available.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, you strategically say that because that's why everyone has what's called the salary sheets. You know that everyone knows who's available by saying whether a guy's available or not. So if I say a guy is available and you know his salary off the top of your head, because that's your job as an executive. Yeah. This guy just said a $16 million guy's salary is available. He's saying without saying, okay, now if you want to play ball, let's play ball.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you didn't actively say that's where the rumor, that's where the thing says sources said, because you didn't say I want to trade Mo or I want to trade player X. You just said everybody is available.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so that's the second call. So now that you know he's available, now it's just putting together the package. And you're trying to get that as low as possible while somebody else or the team that's trying to trade it is trying to drive it up as high as possible.
Yeah, it's bargaining.
Okay. So that's how a trade happens. Now, everybody now in the NBA, they're determining as we speak whether or not they are going to try to push to get into the play-in game, or they're going to go and say, we're going to evaluate our young players to see what we got.
Can I ask you this?
Yes.
If these talks happen at Vegas Summer League, that's quite early on in the season, and then the calls start to happen 25 games into the season. Why
calls are happening all the time. They're happening all the time. But
yeah. But you said like 25 games is a good benchmark to have. Well, we're 12 and 12. We're 20 and 5.
Yeah.
Why do we not usually see many trades until right up until the deadline? Is it just using the deadline as leverage in your negotiation?
Yes. Yeah. You don't want. Okay. So the reason you wait till the deadline is because you don't want to make a trade where someone else can counter you. So for instance, let's say, I'm just making this example. Let's say the Milwaukee Bucks wanted to make a trade right now. And then Milwaukee Bucks suddenly, they trade for a wing player who they feel could guard. They say, well, we know we're going to see Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and they're going to get a wing player. Now, you could see what your Celtics have already done. The Celtics have already prepared to make whatever move is necessary, but they're going to wait to make it because they want to make it where no one else can counter whatever they decide to do. So they got rid of Vonleh, traded, and now they have a roster spot.
Mm-hmm.
So they can do what's called a 2-for-1 now.
Yep.
They can take in, if they identify whatever player, they have a space to take that contract off your books, which would save them money, and bring it to their team to get whatever they're looking for. However, if you make your move too early, the other team can counter it.
Mm-hmm.
So you always make your move, as late as possible, so that if you have a chance to win, the other team can't counter it. Now, some organizations will make a move because they say, you know what? Instead of going to free agency, you normally see smaller market teams do this. They will make their move because they say that was our free agent signing. Okay. So it doesn't really matter. It's just about making a transaction and doing your book. So let's say you will see a player, for instance, like a guy who will have 3 years left on his deal. So you don't even go to free agency. You'll just absorb that contract now, and it really doesn't matter when you absorb it. But if you're trying to win, you're going to wait as late as possible because you're playing chess. You're trying to figure out how to make sure you have the best team when the playoffs start. And you don't want to give your teams, because they're always looking at each other to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Now, from the agent side of things, you being an agent, and I'm not going to ask you about any current discussions or anything that's going on
Sure,
right
you
now.
can ask me anything you want. There's no secrets.
Oh, as an agent, how much involvement do you have in players and trades?
It depends. It depends on the trade. It depends on the
Do
player.
teams call you and say, BJ, we're thinking of trading for your player X? Would he be happy with this trade? Would you be happy with this trade? Or do teams just call the other team and say, we want player X? And then you just get a call saying, your guy's been traded. Because one of the biggest questions we always get on the show, people always talk about the clip of you on the phone to Derrick Rose telling him that he's been traded away from Chicago. People love to ask about that and that whole ordeal and that whole experience. So how involved are agents, not just you specifically, but other agents around the league in these kind of trades?
It happens. It sometimes it happens. Listen, it happens. Every player is different. Every situation is different. It's not like there's one way to do a trade. Sometimes, Mo, you may get a call and you haven't spoken to this person in years. Right? Other than, hey, you see each other at
Summer League,
or you see each other at
All-Star.
whatever. You might see each other at a GM conference or whatever. And all of a sudden I may call Mo and say, listen, hey Mo, hey, I know you got a problem, I got a problem. Let's make a trade. Oh, what you thinking? And then 9 times out of 10, you say, well, let me talk to my owner. You talk to your owner and let's get back. And a trade will happen. And everybody go, oh, I didn't see that coming. I remember.
Go ahead. Sorry.
For instance, remember when Porzingis was traded to the Dallas Mavericks
from the New York Knicks? Phil Jackson.
No one saw that coming.
No.
Yeah, no one saw that. No. Phil wasn't there.
Was that after?
Phil wasn't. Yeah, it was after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was Steve Mills and those guys.
Oh yeah.
Those guys. So no one saw that coming. So the agent, I'm sure, didn't see it coming. The media had no inclination that it was coming. Things sometimes just happen. Sometimes you will get a tip that those guys have been talking about a trade. Sometimes you will request a trade and they'll give you permission to go and orchestrate a trade. Sometimes you'll work with the team. They'll say, hey, we're going to do what's best for us. And remember when Melo asked for a trade?
In Denver?
Yeah. So all of these things just happen. This is just part of the business that we're in. So, going back to the Derrick situation, it wasn't that I didn't, look, I felt there was a part of me that felt really bad because I knew what he really wanted, right? He really wanted to be in Chicago. Make no doubt about it. Okay. That was his first time being traded. That was his first time. Remember, I tell you, the first time is always the most difficult time, right? I got then how and why he felt the way he felt. However, I wanted to also be ultra professional with him in a moment that he felt the way he felt. And the reason I wanted to be professional because life goes on. And I knew then that we were going to be able to look back on it and he was going to say, oh, wow, that's the business. Because that's a part of the business. That was his first time seeing a business that's been happening now for 75 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone gets traded. Everyone gets traded at one point or another during their career. The first time is always the most difficult time because that's the first time you've ever seen or experienced something like that. However, the thing that, I wanted to do for him is the same thing that veteran did for me, is to say, this is the business you're in. Have your moment. Take whatever time you need. Express yourself however you need to express yourself. However, this league is going to just there are going to be trades.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're in them, sometimes you're not. And it doesn't matter whether the trade was the right thing, the wrong thing. What matters is that you got to get yourself ready and grab a hold of yourself and get yourself ready for the business that we've all chosen to be in. And that's very hard. It's not easy. Mm-hmm. So that's what you saw. Now, however you looked at it, it happens to everybody. Like I remember when I first got traded, right? I remember when I first got traded. You need a moment, right? Everybody needs a moment to like say, hey, what just happened here? Right? What just happened? And I wish I would have had a BJ or somebody there to comfort me when that happened, like that happened for him. Right? Yeah. I wish, but I remember when I was there, I was sitting there by myself. Like I was like, how am I supposed to feel about this? Am I supposed to be excited about it? Am I supposed to be like rejected about it? Am I supposed to be happy about it? Am I supposed to, because the new team that traded for you, they're thrilled. They are just thrilled because everyone always feel, what's the first thing we do in the media? Who won the trade?
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
So what you don't want to do is get on. That's why it's important that you express yourself, because the new team that does trade for you, they are thrilled. They're like, we got our guy. That's the guy that's going to help us. That's the guy that's going to. And if you get on the phone and you're like, oh, man, I don't know about this. You know, they're like, wait a minute. We wouldn't. You see.
Yeah.
So there's so many mixed emotions that come with the trade. So everyone's looking at, you know, the thing about the Derrick thing, because, you know, you mentioned that one, is we're just looking at it from the Chicago point of view. Yeah. My biggest thing was, what did the Knicks think? Like, he gets traded and he has you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, to one of the biggest markets, if not the biggest market.
So what did the Knicks think? Like, does he not want to be here? Is he, you know what I'm saying? So again, it's just, there's a level of professionalism that you got to have, and it's okay to have those emotions. You should have those emotions. Why? Because you care. But at the same time, you know, you can't forget about the team that traded whatever they traded to get you.
Yeah.
You know, and 9 times out of 10, they are trading because they feel that they're getting something that could really help them as they're trying to build their organization or build their team. And so, like I said, it's okay. It's however you express yourself, it's okay with me.
Do players get any say in where they get traded to? If a team comes to them and says, hey, BJ, we're thinking of trading you to the moon, right? Whoever. Well, if a player says no, how much weight does that carry?
Well, again, sometimes, just like I just mentioned to you, you want to make sure that that player wants to be there. You get traded and then you see a guy just break down and start, like, you're like, does that mean he does want to come here? Does that mean he doesn't want to come here? You follow what I'm saying? When you're looking at it from the outside. Because, like, again, the team that's making the trade, they're giving up something to get you. So sometimes it's important to have a conversation with people or people that may know that person to say, would he entertain that idea? And then it's easier for you to get traded when you have some idea that you're going to get traded, because now you've kind of worked through the emotional part of it. And it's easier to accept, other than when it first happened, because, you know, if you see a player gets traded during the course of a game, right? I remember, was it like Harrison Barnes or somebody got traded in the middle of a game or something, right? It's always shocking to you, right? But the key is understanding the business that you're in. It's part of the business. You don't know when these things are going to happen, but they're going to happen, and you just deal with them accordingly. But I think the understanding that you have of understanding the business you're in will allow you to get through it, but it doesn't make it any easier just because you understand the business.
If you had one piece of advice to give to a player who's just been found out he's been traded, but he hates the destination that he's been traded to. There's no, maybe it's the worst city to live in and they're at the bottom of the standings and it's the worst situation. What advice would you give that player?
Well, the first thing is, Mo, there is no worse place in the NBA.
Yeah, it's the NBA. the check still cash.
Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing, you're only as good as your best player. You can't have a bad team if you have good players. Okay? The best players go to the worst teams. I'm going to repeat that. The best players get drafted in the lottery because those are the worst teams. So if you are going to a bad team, well, you got to look at yourself.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, Noah Vonleh.
No, there are good players on bad teams.
Yes.
There are good players on bad teams. Okay. That's why we play. And then that's why you're constantly looking. That's why you have to respect the game because, you could be, you take, for instance, you take Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins, 2 or 3 years ago, right? He was playing for the Timberwolves and people kept saying the Timberwolves aren't going any place and da-da-da. And then suddenly he gets in another environment and now he's the second best player on a championship team. Okay. There are good players everywhere in this league. The key is the key is figuring out where you are and what your contribution is and what you can really do and what you can't do in this league. That's called a pro.
Yeah.
That's called a pro. So I came into the league, like all the players, you don't know anything. You come in, you figure it out. I suddenly realized how good everybody was in this league. And I had to make a decision because I knew I was never going to be as good as some of those guys. Some of these players are so gifted, right? They're so gifted that you have to realize that what I can do is become a pro. So I just concentrated on becoming a professional, meaning I knew what I could do and I knew what I couldn't do. And I knew every single night somebody could always utilize a pro.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes 2, sometimes it takes 3, sometimes it never happened. But so the quicker and sooner you can learn how to become a pro, you have a chance to have a career in this league. And when you come into this league, we all, we tend, even in our business currently, right? Podcasting and TV, we talk about the star players. But truthfully speaking, 99% of all the players are really role players.
Yeah. There's only 1 or 2 stars on each team.
Okay. And we can debate on whether they're stars. Okay. A star is literally a standalone player. There's only maybe 3 to 5 guys who can go anywhere and they would be the best player on any team. Like if you put Giannis on any team, he would be Giannis. If you put KD on any team, he'd be KD. And there are others. However, you got to figure out where you fit into this equation with these really gifted players. I mean, some of these players are so good, you just never know until you get there. You know what I mean? Like you play with people and you play, like sometimes I got traded, right? I would get traded and I would go on other teams and I'd be like, wow, I had no idea this player was that good. Because they were playing their role.
Who was the biggest shock? Who was the biggest shock? When you walked into practice and you were like, I did not know he could cook like this.
Well, I'm gonna tell you one of the players. I'm gonna tell you one of the players who, because I was in Chicago, right? I remember when I went to Golden State, I had no idea that Latrell Sprewell was that good because I only saw him twice a year.
Yeah. Iconic.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like Spree was like I saw him when we played. I see him on television. I maybe ran across him a couple times in the summer, but I got a chance to see him every day when I got traded to Golden State. And I was like, oh, wow. Like I had no idea he was that athletic. I had no idea he was that level that he would compete. You know what I mean? So when you go from one conference to another, you get a chance to see players that you don't get a chance to see. You know what I mean? Like, I remember being in a shooting drill with Chris Mullen, and I was like, man, this dude can really, really shoot. Like, I knew he could shoot, but you was like,
no, but he could really shoot.
Really, he could really shoot. You know what I'm saying? And that just came to mind. That was like my first time I got traded. So it was like eye-opening, right? You know what I mean? And so I got a chance to play against different players now on a more regular basis because I was going from one conference to another, which was great. You know what I mean? And so I got a chance. But I remember getting a chance to see Latrell Sprewell. Now, I had been on the East Coast, so I had saw most of those players. I knew that conference. Yeah. But once you go to the other conference, you get a chance to see them a little more. So it was, you know, I remember playing against Nick Van Exel, I believe.
Oh, Nick the Quick.
So I didn't play against him all the time in the East, you know, in the Eastern Conference. But when I got a chance to see him in the Western Conference and I was out here in California, I was like, oh, okay. All right. And then so that was, but it was just like, but that happens to every player. You know what I mean? There's a learning curve that you get a chance to see guys. But in particular, that was my first time seeing an all-star caliber player, a different all-star caliber player who I didn't see as much, even though we were in the NBA. I would only see him twice a year. And then if he missed a game, maybe I didn't even see him that year. You know what I mean? Or you only saw him once that year on a, you know what I mean? Or you might have caught them on the fourth game in 5 days on the back of a road trip. So that's not a good indicator of who that player really is, and vice versa when we was traveling on the West Coast. So, but he was a player that I was like, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And opened my, and I was like, okay. And it was, one of the best things that happened for me was when I got traded, because I got a chance to see
more
how I got a chance to see the rest of the league. I got a chance to learn new systems. I got a chance to develop relationships. I got a chance to see a different brand of basketball. But more importantly, it was a huge learning curve. It was like rejuvenating in some regards because I got a chance to live out my dream. You know what I mean? Now I went from playing in one offensive set with these different players to other defensive schemes and offensive schemes. So I kind of embraced going to other places because I got a chance to learn other systems. Like, what do I really like? And then the fun thing about playing in the NBA, Mo, the real a fun thing for me, okay, this is going to sound crazy, but you start to realize different systems that you would fit in and you could play well in.
Yeah. So how a team runs their offense. And
yeah, and that, well, just how you would fit in. Like, for instance, you know, like I had never played with a shot blocker before. And I would always imagine what it would be like playing with a Patrick Ewing or Akeem Olajuwon or David Robinson.
Yeah.
So I would have these in-depth conversations with Kenny Smith and these guys. They're like, man, what is it really like playing, knowing that you're playing with a guy who could like erase a shot if a guard gets by you?
Yeah.
And then I remember Ron Harper had this thing. He played with, you know, when he played with like Larry Nance and these guys, when he first played at Cleveland, he learned how to play defense from behind. And I never would.
You would have never thought that because that wasn't needed in the system that you were playing in.
He was playing in it, yeah. And his job was, he knew he had a shot blocker with like Larry Nance and he had big bodies with like Brad Doherty. And he just wanted to make sure that that player didn't have the option to fade away.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, wow. Like, you know, so you start to see these things and all of a sudden, Mo, it opens your mind. So every year I was always like I remember watching like the late Jerry Sloan, and I would imagine what it would be like playing with a guy like
and
Karl
roll.
Malone.
Yeah,
screen roll
every possession. You average 20 assists a game.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because I had never done that before. And then you would play against like a Tim Hardaway, and this guy was playing with so much freedom.
Yeah.
And you know, and then you know, so that was really fun for me, Mo, because it was like every game was a learning curve, and then you had to learn how to play, and then you started to like, develop relationships with it and stuff like that. So I enjoyed it because I just loved the game, and it was like, oh wow, this was like new. And then you saw big guards coming into the league, right? And then you start seeing Penny Hardaway and these guys, and you were like, oh wow. And I had played against Magic, so I kind of had a little taste of playing against. But and then you had these little guards like Michael Adams and Spud Webb and Muggsy Bogues, and so it was just. The NBA was so much fun for me, Mo, because I got a chance to learn. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed, looking around the league. However, you're going into an unknown thing. And I'll say this, change is hard. It's hard for a lot of people. But when I look back on it, Mo, my greatest growth as a person and as a player is when every time I was traded. I mean, if I can say it now, like my greatest, Mo, I learned so much from all those places. And I enjoyed every moment of it. Was it hard? Yeah, because you got to move, you got to get yourself together, you got to hear. And then if you have a family, you got to, because it's always tougher on your family.
Schools and that sort of stuff.
Schools and
that's a good wholesome takeaway though.
Yeah, but I enjoy I enjoy it. I enjoyed it. That's why I enjoy watching the games now, because you get the chance to see new things. You're like, oh, I haven't seen that play before, or oh, I haven't seen that. Oh, they're watching guys play a 5-out offense. Mo, I just never seen it. The closest I ever played against it was the run TMC thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Like when I see guys shooting, when I see fives shooting, threes,
deep
right?
Threes.
I immediately think of the late Manute Bol. And I start thinking of like Bill Laimbeer was shooting threes, right? He wasn't shooting as frequent as he had, but you start thinking about, wow, you start thinking of like how the game has evolved, and you saw him, but you just didn't see him like you see him now. So to me, it's really cool. And that's what I'm saying. That people say old school, new school. No, I just keep watching the game, and you keep
true
watching
school.
It, and you just keep watching this, and you keep saying. I can remember when Manute Bol was shooting threes. We didn't know what to do. Like, Mo, you didn't. You
couldn't even put a hand up. You couldn't even get a hand to his face, let alone put a contested
Mo,
shot.
Everybody, think about this. Everybody was taught on defense in transition. You run back to the paint, protect the paint so someone can't, and then you would identify shooters, because no one was literally running to the 3-point line.
Yeah, because now guys don't even run to the lane. They flare out to the 3-point line so the player can attack and dish.
And when Manute Bol was shooting threes, Mo, I can remember watching this game on television. Manute Bol was playing against the Phoenix Suns. I remember for some reason I was watching that game, and I can't remember how many threes he made, but he was making threes and no one on the court knew what to do. Do we rotate to the guy? Who told him he could shoot threes? And I just remember thinking, God, what are we going to do? And we didn't know what to do when we saw Manute Bol. It wasn't a theme mode where you went small ball. I think Don Nelson was the only guy at the time who would think to do something like that. But here was a guy who was 7-something here, 7-3 or 4, and he was shooting threes. So
I think he had 6 3-pointers in that game and 3 blocked shots as well.
It was so radical. I mean, I remember we were all talking about it in the locker room. Man, did you see this guy? Who is this guy? What are we going to do? And so those were it was literally, that's what made it fun, because, that's the one thing I will say that to me, which made it fun. Every night provided a different challenge. Playing now, Mo, I everyone plays the same now. So I love it when I see something new, because I'm always looking to see something new. I'm always looking. I love it when people have new plays, right? I remember when they first started doing these plays now called screen to screener, right?
Yep. They brought that in from a
And
lot
when
of European leagues used
yeah,
that.
yeah, it was like a Euro thing. I think Spain or somebody
Yeah, they call
started
it
doing
Spain
it. Right?
or a stack pick and roll. And I think the
Yeah,
Phoenix
yeah. So
Suns
yeah,
used it a lot, and the Dallas Mavericks used it a lot, and now the rest of the league is all doing it.
yeah. So I remember when I first saw that, I was so excited. I was like, oh man, I just saw a new play. Like, how would you defend it? How would you play? I was like, oh man, I would love to play. I would love to have ran that play because you see the options. So I'm always looking for to see things that are new. However, that's to me in the NBA when I played, every team had a different system of play.
Yeah.
Every
So you
team
had
had
your
a different
Bulls
challenge.
with a triangle. You had all the screen roll stuff with the Utah Jazz. You had the Run TMC Golden State Warriors who are out running and gunning. Like
the Pistons played a certain way. The Houston Rockets played a certain way. The Knicks played a certain. Like
San Antonio and
Antonio and Mo. Every game you had to play different. Now, Mo, like everyone's just like
ISO, screen roll, ISO, screen roll. But that's we're going down a rabbit hole. We're sounding like two old men here now. We're complaining about today's game, but we're talking about trades. I'm not
complaining. I'm just
we're talking about trades, and I need everyone listening to this to make a trade. Whatever other podcasts you listen to, if you're not listening to this every day, trade away your other podcasts. This is where you need to be rocking. That was 45 minutes of knowledge from the great BJ Armstrong. Real insight into what it's like to be traded as a player, as an executive, as an agent, and also some great stories about some of the greatest players from the 1990s. I hope you enjoyed the show. Yeah. BJ, thank you for sharing that with us. I really enjoyed listening.
Oh, man, I appreciate it. You know what I mean? Trip back down memory lane, and it's a great game. So as you're watching, it's always cool to see new things within the game. The game has evolved, and I think I understand why the game has evolved to where it is because of the accuracy of how these guys are shooting. Like, Mo, I just never had to worry about guys shooting at this distance with this level of accuracy, right? But that's a tribute to this generation. On the whole, as a whole, these guys are better shooters.
Yeah.
On the whole, I mean, they're all great shooters. Okay. And so that's forced the game to go. But I'm excited to see what's next. I mean, Mo, because we don't know. Like, whoever thought that Steph Curry would have had this effect on the game?
Only Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Steve Kerr and Steph Curry. Shout out to them.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is great. So I can't wait to see what's next. I can't wait to see. I think
we talked about
some
Manute Bol. We got Bol and Victor and these guys coming through. So that's what's next. But
yes, Victor. I think Victor.
Did you see his game winner at the weekend?
Did
you see his game winner at the buzzer?
I didn't.
Oh, man. Tremont Waters, former Boston Celtics, took a layup and missed. Wemby's teammate tried to put the ball back in the hoop and missed. Wemby said, let me just clean up the mess, and slammed the ball back in the hoop, secured the win. But that's another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, share with a friend, follow on Spotify and Apple, 5-star reviews and ratings, and the other stuff I say at the end of every show. Most importantly, much like Manute Bol against the Phoenix Suns, get buckets.